Hi, it's Dan. Welcome back to Managing Digital. This is an update to a video that Mark Bodman and I did about 4 or 5 months ago when CSDM5 was a draft. Now it's a real thing. Mark is the product manager for CSDM. We both work together on the IT4IT forum of the Open Group on the IT4IT standard, which overlaps a lot with CSDM5 conceptually and also in the source of the ideas. Mark and I recently released a paper on digital product portfolio management, or DPPM. I'll put a link below. Mark and I were together in Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago at the Open Group conference, where we made a lot of progress on what's next with IT4IT, what's next with digital product. And we agreed to have another video on the subject of how do IT4IT and CSDM5 interrelate conceptually and in practical terms in ways that will help you in your career and in your business. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about IT4IT and CSDM5 and
Okay.
where we are today, how it's different from what we talked about that's in the video that we put up earlier, but
Okay.
also, as you say, what's the thinking behind it? Because that's evolved quite a lot. And
Well, it continues to evolve, right? So as we expand, our customers pull us into new areas, we have to respond, and that's what you're seeing is in CSDM as the result of a lot of that. In some correlation, maybe to the IT for IT stuff we've been working on. I did experiment with a new chat GPT. I put all our publications in there and some other stuff like CSDM and
that's when you showed me in Amsterdam.
yeah. And so I fed it a little bit more information and tweaked some of the default queries, and now it's truly public, so people can get to it.
Anybody can look at it, right?
Yeah. And just to test the waters, I put it on LinkedIn, and a lot of folks commented on it. It actually getting a lot of kudos, a lot of interesting hype on LinkedIn.
If you look at where we are today with our IT for IT as it's evolving, how valuable or important would it be for someone wanting to get to grips with their CSDM problem
Yeah.
to learn about what we were writing about there?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand, Dan, and there's no mistake. It wasn't by accident that I'm involved in both, and I'm bridging that gap. I'm kind of injecting that, the IT for IT thought process into the CSDM thought process, and vice versa to some degree. We recently added, the manufacturer and delivery portfolio because a lot of what I'm experiencing in my company is that when these digital products are used in those areas, they're not managed well. The life cycle's not managed well, and that causes unseen, consequences. And so we've added that in IT for IT, and vice versa. We've Some of the things that we changed in CSDM5 is adding we now have 5 domains of information, and we've laid it out left to right, very much like IT for IT is laid out left to right, right? Strategy portfolio all the way through, detect to
So what,
corrects.
what are the 5 domains in CSDM5 as it landed?
Yeah, so we did a little bit of a rename on some, and we added a new one, which I can actually show it to you just to,
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
yeah. So just give me a second to bring that up. And we've relayed it out left to right, and the feedback from customers has been enormous, right? And the interesting thing about that is that one of my colleagues, Rob Coton, when he came to the board, he started using this layout, and we just kind of stuck with it. Yeah.
So this does map more to what we're talking about in IT for IT.
Exactly. So there's no mistake in some of these ideas starting to cross-pollinate these different areas of work, right? Well, the work we do in IT for IT is, of course, vendor agnostic, and but the work I do every day is vendor specific. So we've got to cross-pollinate these things where possible so that everybody benefits. But it really starts with ideation and strategy, and this is a lot like strategy to portfolio, or the evaluate value stream that we call it now. Okay, and then next one is design and planning, which is kind of like what we do in requirement to deploy. Very
Well, that is
specific.
going to be the explore value stream, but it's also going to be the integrate value stream. But they're not quite distinct here. They're not quite mapping perfectly.
No, because we now have 7 value streams in IT for IT, right? We don't have the same number of value streams here. But it's a slightly different purpose. These are just groups of information, data elements, not necessarily functionality.
What you've done compared to the four more traditional groups in IT4IT, which I think we've decided we're going to start talking more about again, as the first two things on your list are the old uh, strategy to portfolio.
That's right. S2P is here.
And the second, the build and integration is, uh,
Requirement to deploy,
yeah.
RTD.
And the service delivery and service consumption don't actually map directly to that.
Yes and no. So here's what's interesting. Request to fulfill is actually here, R to F. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I see that.
And then here is D to C, detect to correct. And so we reverse these two areas. And I like this better. As a matter of fact, I brought this up in the meeting in Amsterdam because the use of things is managed at the last stage, right? The detect to correct is sort of here. So in IT for IT, this is a little harder to see because it's in the middle. It's like, wait a minute, maybe it should be on the end, right? So
This is part of the mindset that people bring to this. So if I'm thinking about an ITIL mindset, I first started working with the ITIL tribe back at Walmart days. One of them said to me, the problem is they should create a change request when they start a development project and things would be much better. I said, well, maybe, but they're not going to do that because they have,
well, and a change request is really here at this boundary.
yeah. But
I
she's
mean,
saying if you should, before you even start building the software, you should be building it against a change request. That was
well,
the pure ITIL mindset.
well,
But
that's right because you're now you're trying to over optimize for a framework which is down in this area. Okay,
yeah,
not
which is
it
why
doesn't
people never did that.
it doesn't work here. But that was the same comment on the whole service versus application problem because 90% of what you do your planning around is the applications, the development, the buying and deploying of code, right? And then when you get here, this is the app world, right? The app portfolio management world. And then down here is the service management world. And never the two met. And so digital product that we came up with does bind those together, DP. The
It
DP
does.
is the binder between those two worlds. And that's that, two of the personas in the room, was me coming in at it from this direction, and then service management coming at it from this direction. And then we had the poor operations guys in the middle that were like, what the hell how do I look at stuff? How do I meet both of those needs, right? It's like I've got stuff running on servers, but how do I know which app it is? How do I know what service it's providing to what consumer? So
So the thing about this that interests me, and we're working on the financial management aspect
yeah.
in IT4IT forum, but that's not really in this picture.
No, it's not here explicitly, but I will say that as at the minute you choose to make some spend decisions here, you start buying things and allocating folks to do real work.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then and
It's
so
it's
there
it's in a different layer though, isn't it? It's not on this layer of what people
we,
think about.
we
So
just don't talk about it, but because this is a data entity thing, we could actually put in stuff in here such as the cost models, right? What's the budget and cost models for your investments? Um,
yeah.
Um, and then down here, the TCO can maybe be your feedback loop here.
Well,
TCO.
the things we have in about money and IT4IT are, I mean, I'm just looking at this. Frankly, I do like pictures of boxes and lines better than bullet lists, but the things like the usage records feeding into a chargeback algorithm, that's not on this picture, is it?
No, no, but the usage records comes from tracking what you're selling and how people are using the instances of your product. When we
Right.
talk about the contract and the instances in IT for IT, it's really the same concept here. And we talk about that in the terms of consumption, whatever people bought. or whatever people are using from an internal service management point of view, like, laptops as a service or,
So the financial overlay on this and more of the business perspective
yeah,
is, why are you doing all this stuff? Well, you're doing it in order to, from a top-down board of directors level, you're doing it in order to support some kind of financial outcome, or at least some kind of value outcome
that's right.
that that you need to instrument the right side of your picture with things that help you to measure whether that's actually working.
That's right. And so where things get muddy in terms of what you're investing in here and who is the primary beneficiary here, it gets really muddy. And that's where the four portfolios comes in, Dan, that we came up with.
Yes.
Really helps because we've got these entities that exist for all four. The only difference is, are you selling something? Are you quoting something, or is this something that's going to be totally used internally in the manufacturing department or by employees to do the labor, right? To automate labor.
Yeah, but you still need to understand that you need to have some way to quantify the cost and the benefit to the organization.
That's right. That's right. And I'm finding a lot of success in that four portfolio discussion. I met with a bank, the last week. So after our meeting in Amsterdam, I met with a bank in Amsterdam and spent a half a day with them. And when I brought up the four portfolios and I walked through that with them, the light bulb went off. I have to say that they were really vexed. They didn't know how to understand each of these four portfolios and the dependencies between them, because they all go through the same processes essentially, but they're doing it for different outcomes, for different persona, consumers. And they didn't know how to organize it till I showed them the four portfolios, and man, that was like, they've been deliberating on this problem for years. So I was like, here's your answer. And it was like, they walked away.
How would you describe, how would they have described the problem that you were talking about?
Yeah. So the best way to describe it is that they were organized using the Spotify model for the stuff they sell. But for stuff that was consumed by employees, they were more aligned to capabilities, business capabilities. Um, and so the two didn't match up very well. They didn't have a way to see them all on the same level playing field, or, and understand their dependencies between them or at all. And when I introduced the other two, right, the infrastructure services, for example, mapped to the foundational stuff. So that kind of covered these areas, and the folks that, the investments there, the portfolio there, and the building blocks. And then the manufacturing and delivery also helped because that was a blind spot for them. They had way too many they had way too many CI/CD pipelines. Um, and they were
Yeah.
able to rationalize and start getting that under control too. So, but yeah, when we walked through the four portfolios with stakeholders from all four areas, the light bulbs just went boom, boom, boom. It was like almost visible light bulbs going off. I've got this new view of the four portfolios that I put together that map the two. So this is you'll recognize the diagram, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, when you're looking at the strategy and investment in what you provide externally, you're organizing that by product lines. So these are what you sell to different markets and how you organize them, combine them, describe them for different consumer markets. For this one, this is their manufacturer, CI/CD pipelines, sensors, that sort of thing, and you're organizing that based on the product value streams. So different products require different technologies, right, to create them. Physical things need robots and, sprayers and actuators and stuff like that. CI/CD pipelines need, build tools, right? Code repositories. So, but they're all blending together, right? It's all usually combinations of all that stuff. And then here we've got the enterprise services, which is more or less your business capabilities. So what things are people doing?
Okay.
What work are they doing, and how do you characterize that work in terms of process and people? and the technologies they need to actually do their jobs. And then the last one is to shared IT services. That's another common nomenclature, but this is really common in TBM Council because they created something called the IT towers. Well, those are
Right.
all shared IT services, really, and we match them to the CSDM concepts along the way as well. Now, we don't really have something in CSDM called manufacturing services, but we do have something called service instances, which accounts for most of that. So it's a little bit of a stretch here on manufacturing service, but a lot of this does come into play with CSDM in this orange area called service instance. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, that's the correlation, Dan. I think what we've done in CSDM is tackled different portfolios along the way. The consumption for people mostly in these two areas, the consumption for automation is really down here and down here, right? In the build team.
It's great. That helps to show how these things fit together. And
Yeah.
we haven't really talked about underlying models in any detail. Oh, I like the chart. It is easier to understand, but you'd still have database with object types and integrations and things below it.
Yeah. And there is a missing thing which we haven't really described yet are these portfolios that have to exist to accommodate the whole IT for IT life cycle bit of information. So when you're making a top-down decision on which product line to axe or maybe invest more in, at a higher level of abstraction, then that becomes a little harder to manage today because there is no common portfolio construct today. Same thing with product lines, right? There's a different construct which we define the higher level, aggregation of products or value streams and what those are. And then down here, the business capability, same thing. Not every company does capability-based planning, but if they did, this would be much more doable in that context of using capabilities for that portfolio. And then the last one is these IT towers. These two, by the way, align pretty well with some of the concepts that TBM Council deals with, or in APQC to some degree. So I'm hoping that we can provide some of that data to customers. As you know, I'm going through a bit of a skunk works to create a new taxonomy, which is more or less describing these four areas
Yeah,
in a hybrid way, which deals with your investment planning, but also that feedback that you need for making changes on changing your investment strategy in each portfolio.
we work really well together, but we did come at this from different starting points. A lot of what I brought to this is from an insurance industry perspective, in which a lot of detailed data is really important if you want to make any money.
That's right.
So not understanding the details of what's going on with your product is not a good idea at an insurance company. But
That's right.
but you can get away with it for other certainly for a lot of kinds of software products, um, much more easily.
Yeah, and what these arrows in the middle represent is a way of associating all four portfolios to each other in a way that makes a lot of sense. So your technical services down here, like network services, are used by everybody, right? So it
Yeah,
underpins everything that you sell or using in manufacturing or your employees are trying to get their work done, right? And the same thing here with the tool chains. The tool chains are going to be somewhat different for different areas, but everything has a tool chain of some sort. So what you sell has a tool chain of some sort, physical manufacturing facilities or CI/CD pipelines, same as there's even a self-referencing thing here, but I didn't put that in there. And then there's of course tool chains to provision new stuff when people need new capacity, right? Whether it be infrastructure or network capacity or storage, at a lower level. So
that's great. I'm going to use some of that and make a video within the next week.
yeah, to me, Dan, this for portfolio and the lines between them and what they really mean really help on that investment sort of conversation. So I can look at the big rocks. I'll call them big rocks because let's say the stuff you're selling has some serious technical issues down here. You can show that. you're thinking about it in the conversation of we're going to have to make investments down here in the foundational area. Well, why would we want to do that? Well, because there's a net effect to what we're selling, or employees are using. To be honest, I worked for 2 years um, on a project that was way down here. It was get rid of a mainframe system that we were using, and it was not connected here at all. And so at the end of my 2 year stint, I found out that there was no money. All the money was being spent here, and no money was being spent here. And so, even though I was the architect for this grand, huge problem, because there was a lack of visibility or lack of willingness to invest, it didn't matter. And you know, it really frustrated the hell out of me because wasting your time and realizing that after 2 years, I never want to do that again, and I don't want anybody to go through that again. But I think the vision here that's finally come together at this point in time, Dan, can solve problems for everybody involved. Every one of these consumer personas, even end customers, so we can take care of them better and understand the impacts of these technical debts.
That's great. That's great. We're going to talk more about this as we keep motoring along with. So if you enjoyed that video, which I hope you did, if you're still with me, I think you did, please don't forget to subscribe. And if you're interested in the technical aspects of the IT4IT standard, which are very tightly integrated with the concepts in CSDM, think about taking a certification training course with me. I'll put the details below, and you can look at the QR code at the end of this video and scan that. I'd be very glad to hear from you. Stay in touch, stay in tune, stay subscribed. See you next time. Thanks.